Okay, let's talk about grit. So this is, again, very hot topic in education. Everyone's talking about it at every level of education. Grit, what is it? Oh, Duckworth, Angela Duckworth. Look up her TED Talk and watch it. Think about it. It's a pretty interesting idea. Power of passion and perseverance in learning. So grit is defined this way. Grit equals trait level perseverance and consistency of interest. Trait level perseverance is actually defined with a, do you know about personality trait theory, the big five you've heard about, like extroversion, introversion, openness to experience, neuroticism, which I'm kind of high in, unfortunately, conscientiousness. So this is actually, comes from trait personality and says, these are basically fixed traits that vary with, they're expressed within a certain range, but kind of you are who you are. So conscientiousness is part of this grit. And then consistency of interest. Basically, do you stick with things that you say you're going to stick with in the long term? So here are some of the items on the grit scale. Trait level perseverance, I finish whatever I begin. I'm a hard worker, I'm diligent. Good stuff, right? We want that in our students. On the other side, consistency of interest. I often set a goal but later choose to pursue a different one. New ideas and projects often distract me from previous ones. My interests change from year to year. These are all reverse scored, so if you say yes to these, you get a low consistency of interest. That's kind of obvious, I think. And then those are added up to give the grit scale. It's pretty interesting, I think. It's definitely mapping mindsets to some outcomes, those outcomes being persistence in a task, finishing what you started. So we have this mapping. If you look at the research on grit, you'll find some really positive connections between grit and things like performance. This is academic performance, things like GPA and finishing programs, persistence in programs, and persistence in hobbies and other activities over time. Self-regulation can go either way, either not correlated or positively. That's great. High-level cognition, same thing, either not correlated or positive. Deep learning, not so much, which basically means some people with grit adopt surface level and some people with grit adopt deep learning strategies. Positive emotions are all over the map in the literature. Creativity is pretty consistently negatively correlated with grit. And then pro-social, like collaboration and teaming and engaging with others in a positive way, I couldn't find it. So it hasn't been tested yet. So there's a lot of question marks around grit. I think at Olin, we have a responsibility. We think about ourselves as pioneers in learning experience design. I think it's our job to explore this stuff and to find out what it means for us and what it might mean for the engineering educational community. So big questions I have about grit, and I'll finish with this, and these maybe you can discuss over dinner if you like. What are my big questions about grit? Number one, it's kind of defined here and here, but there's not a lot of work in the middle. Can we develop this in a way that will increase or help us design learning experiences? What does that look like if we take these big concepts here and here and plop them down in the middle? How do we design courses around it? I think we should try. Could grit benefit from a new problem framing? This is one of my beefs with grit is when you hear people talk about it, they say, we've got these school systems and the problem is students aren't persisting through them. They don't have grit. So we need grittier people in our school systems. Not crazy about that framing. Actually, I'm not, I've become wary of any effort in educational change that attributes problems in our educational system to students. And that's what it feels like this is kind of doing. I know it's not intending to do that, but I say we can reframe this and say, what does grit look like in the classroom? And do we need to think about the interaction of grit in classroom? What does it look like at the institutional learning culture level? What do our disciplines say about grit? And what are our cultural or societal values around this? I think if we kind of reframe the problem as a, what does grit look like in a classroom situation, we might be better off. Does the grit concept sidestep bigger questions? So if you are not questioning the system that exists, and you're just saying we need a different set of student behaviors and mindsets, I think you're missing some of the biggest questions in educational change right now. What we do at Olin is we question the system. So Why? So if we consider, this is from a Sir Ken Robinson animated TED Talk, if we consider our educational system right now, especially in K-12, industrial system, standardized testing, dividing things up by discipline. So generally, I say we need to redefine grit as Olin College and get away from this idea of just saying we need grit, period. Like persist in this thing that we've created for you, and then we'll say you're gritty and that's good. And we need to shift to something that I might call strategic grit or reflective grit or self-determined grit.